Welcome to our listeners to the pilot episode of Overexposed, a new podcast run by BWRM. And this is the first episode, so please bear with us. I'm Jackie. I am one of the directors of BWRM in Australia, and I'm joined by Dave. Dave, would you like to introduce you?
Yeah, so I'm Dave from BWRM, another one of the directors. And we're excited to see how the podcast goes and what value people can get from it.
Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of a background of why on earth we thought we'd do a podcast, other than the fact that we both think we're so interesting and have always wanted to do a podcast. Not really.
Which is a big part of it.
Yeah. But the reason that we thought we'd do a podcast is for a long time we've been trying to figure out how to pass on. There's just so much to the world of real estate photography, but not just real estate photography. The whole idea of running your own business in this specific industry. And there are so many people that we have involved in BWRM that have mountains and mountains of knowledge that is just sitting there waiting to be passed on, and we wanted some sort of medium that we could use to pass it on to people. And there's so many different topics that we could talk about for ages, and I guess that's what we wanted to do, is talk about it in chapters. Hopefully people join us. They can go to a podcast with the title about something that's maybe challenging them at the moment, or just that they think they can learn from, and just tap into different areas of expertise that's much harder to put down in writing.
That's it, and there's not just it's not people's photography experience or experience in the business that we're interested in. Everybody's got a story that leads up to how they got to be a real estate photographer and experiences before that. But it could be useful to other people to know about how you got to be successful from where you started.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of takes me into today's topic, which is, we're just going to get to know Dave because he's the mysterious one. But also with what Dave said, we've got such a group of so many unique characters, and everybody's really different, but they've all managed to be successful in their own rights using different skills. So again, it's not an industry that you need to be one specific person with one specific set of skills to succeed in. We've got people from all sorts of backgrounds. So Dave, you're one of the directors of BWRM. What's your role in BWRM?
So I am the CIO, so Chief Information Officer, which means that I'm in charge of things like computer stuff, the software that we develop, all things technical, really, that kind of stuff.
How did you end up in that role? You're a photographer.
Yeah, well, I am a photographer, but I wasn't always a photographer. I come from a background of IT. I did 20 years in IT, ranging from operations through coding, management, technical support, all of that kind of stuff. And decided once I changed countries to change my life and become the most glamorous thing I could think of, which was a photographer. So here I am.
Oh, and what was it that attracted you to this industry in the first place? I mean, it's struggling to compute for me, if you'll excuse the pun, but you've come from being a coder who, in my mind, is someone who just sits in a dark room eating Doritos and doesn't want to talk to anyone. And now you're going into houses every day, making small talk with strangers and talking to real estate agents. What was it that made you go, that's something I want to do?
Well, to be honest, there was probably a few things. Firstly, I wanted to get out of the UK, so I wanted to change country. And I did sit in dark rooms in basically broom cupboards with people bothering me for many years. But the bit that I enjoyed most about the job that I was doing before was actually solving problems and going out and, if you ever had a call where you had to go out on site and fix things, that was what I really liked. I've run my own small businesses before as a coder, as well as working for people, so I really like running my own business. And so we packed up everything, moved to Australia without having ever been here before. So that was a big move. moved halfway around the world, got a job back in IT, and found myself sitting in a dark room looking out of a different window onto different landscapes, and thought, hang on a minute, this wasn't quite what I had in mind. So luckily, and I say that with 2020 hindsight, luckily I got made redundant or got offered redundancy with the job that I was working in Sydney at the time. But they said, you're redundant, but we'll give you, I think it was a year to sit at your desk just in case we need you. So that obviously paid. So that gave me a really good opportunity to sit and think, what the hell do I actually want to do now? Because I knew that I didn't want to do IT before I moved to Australia, but obviously it's like a comfy, cardigan. You just put it back on and you carry on. So yeah, I decided I wanted to do something where I could go out and do stuff and then leave. Something that was sort of technical, because obviously that's my skill. Something that involved, delivering something or doing something and then moving on. It really appeals to me, that kind of, transactional type thing. And I think I heard an advert on the radio for something and thought, well, I'll just see what happens, and so here I am.
Yeah, happy. I hope enjoying it.
It's been exciting. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned about not talking to people and all that kind of stuff. The person I am now, compared to the person I was, 12, 13 years ago when I started this, you wouldn't recognise, I don't think. You have to adapt, you have to change. You can't just... I remember once being in a property, I think it was my third or fourth property that I did, and I was still very much, as many people do, you go into your comfort zone when you're on site. You're a coder, and you're concentrating on the technical, which is the camera, rather than everything that's going on around you, which is what you're supposed to be concentrating on. And someone said to me something like, oh, do you think this cushion should be here or do you think it should be there? And I thought, the hell are you asking me for? I'm just a computer programmer. And so I think at that point I thought, oh, hang on, they actually think I should know the answer to that question. Maybe I should think about what I want to do with this cushion. And so that kind of got me out of my comfort zone a little bit. And one more thing that really sort of changed the way I thought about things, which I've probably, some people will have heard this story before, but I think it's an important one. I walked into an agency back in my first area with my first business. I wasn't doing very well. I wasn't making much money because I just started. I wasn't getting any support. This is pre-BWRM. And I'd tried to call this agent 5, 6, 7 times. He never answered. I'd emailed him. He never answered. I'd gone into the office. Nothing had ever happened. And I walked into this agency, and it was a really important one to get because it was in a great location in High Street. And I walked into this agency, and the receptionist gave me a smirk as if to say, "Oh God, here he is again." And I said, "Oh, is John around?" And she said, "No, he's busy." And I thought, oh, God, here we go again. I've got to leave now. Anyway, from behind the divider, I hear this voice, "Hey, Dave, is that you?" And I thought, oh, my God, he knows who I am. He's read my email. He's waiting. He needs a photographer. And I went, "Hey, John," I shouted over the divider, "Hey, John, how you going?" And at that point, I realised he was on the phone. He wasn't actually talking to me at all. The admin gave me an even bigger smirk as if I was the biggest idiot that she's ever seen. And I kind of disappeared out of the office with my tail between my legs, feeling a bit stupid. And so that was the sort of horrible social embarrassment thing that as an Englishman and as a coder is like the worst thing to deal with possible. And probably a month later or 6 weeks later, when I went back to that agency, I had this moment where you just think, I can't go back in there again. Like I can't. They're all going to remember, they've all been laughing at me for the last 6 weeks, whatever. And then I thought, you know what, I've got to pay my bills. So I'm going in, I don't care. And for me, again, coming from that kind of personality type, that was a huge step. I walked in there. It was a different admin because that lady had been sacked for presumably smirking at people. I literally walked in, and as I walked in, this guy, John, walked out of behind his dividers with some stuff in his hand. He'd just got a listing. And I went, "Oh, hey, John." And he went, "Are you Dave, the photographer?" And I went, "Yeah." Anyway, went in, sat down with him. got that listing that he had in his hand, and I was off. So it's kind of that reinforcement of, if you do the things you don't like, even though you really don't like them, it does make a difference. And so, yeah, even though my natural way is not to deal with people and to go and sit in a room and be on a computer. Obviously, you need to get paid, and when things like that happen, you get the results. So,
yeah, it's definitely like, I don't know, it's a bit cheesy, but I don't know. In all the years I've been doing this, it's really rung true that the good stuff and the real success happens as soon as you put yourself out of your comfort zone. That's where you do one thing that's uncomfortable, and you're like, it just 9 times out of 10 you get a win out of it somehow.
Or you learn something, but the thing that kind of thing, and there's been a few of those, but the thing that kind of thing has taught me is that these guys sit in their office all day, and people come and go all day, and some of them will make a fool of themselves. But there's enough of them that no one's going to remember at the end of the day. And, you just keep going back in. And, one of the guys told me that I had back in Victoria, another thing that stuck with me, she said, we weren't going to use you, but we realised you weren't going to go away. And that's my entire sales strategy, to be honest. So,
doesn't bother people.
Just keep going in until you can say no as many times as you want. You only have to say yes once. So, that's it, really.
And so you ran a business in Victoria. You sold that business, moved to a different part of Victoria. No. Didn't you start in New South Wales?
Yeah, so I started in New South Wales with a franchise, a completely empty area. There was probably, one agency or one guy in one agency that was using the franchise at the time. So I didn't start from completely nothing, but I did start from more or less nothing. That particular guy wasn't even using the franchise for all of the shoots either. So it was just, the smallest amount of work. I worked there for 2.5 years, pretty much got...
Your own editing?
Yes, doing my own editing, drawing my own floor plans. There weren't many videos back then, but when there was one, you obviously had to edit it yourself. Got to the stage where we were doing within 2 years, we were doing round about 80 or 90 jobs a month, I think, from memory. And most of the big agencies were using us in town. Sold that, moved down to Victoria, which was an odd experience, because when you're used to everybody calling you and everybody knowing who you are, and then you go back to nobody knowing who you are and nobody caring, it's kind of humbling. Started... Again, it was a bigger franchise with like one photographer with not much work. So we built that up to have 8 photographers, and I built up my area to have 2 areas to have plenty of work. Then we left the franchise and we started BWRM. We, as in the group of us, started BWRM and had to build up my own independent area because obviously I didn't have my photographers anymore. Then I sold that last year. So we sold that to our contractor, Janine Ward, Janine and Steve. And then, like some kind of idiot, moved up to Queensland to start all over again, just to see if we could do it 3 times in a row. And we've been up here a year.
Wow.
Glutton for punishment, I think, is probably the description.
Yeah, but also probably the person that's started and built the most businesses in this. So I'd say if anybody knows how to get clients and build a business, you'd probably have some good tips.
And also probably on paper, the worst person to do that in terms of, when I started, absolutely no sales experience, not even, I had customer service experience, but anybody who's dealt with an IT help desk knows what level of that is.
Yeah.
So almost the anti-salesman, and then have gone from doing that to the complete opposite of starting 3 businesses and touchwood succeeding with all 3 so far. So
that's a really interesting point, because it's something that a lot of people who are interested in joining BWRM, it becomes something that they see as their biggest challenges. They come to me and say, look, I'm just a photographer, I'm a wedding photographer, or I just like taking pictures or whatever. I don't know how to sell. I've never had sales training. Not even that, like now I'm supposed to go out and sell to people who are literally trained salesmen, so they'll recognize all the tricks. How on earth am I going to do that? That's just too hard. And what would you say to those people as someone who's come from wanting to just eat Doritos in front of a computer in a cupboard?
I haven't moved too far away from that, let's be honest.
Slightly hotter cupboard.
Yeah. I think the answer is that you can. I just think that you can't sell something to someone that they don't want to buy, right? Mm-hmm. So you can use all the skills and all that. There's certain things that you can do, to help the process of selling. But at the end of the day, someone's got to want to buy from you, because otherwise it's not going to work. So as long as you're showing them that you're a good guy, that or girl, that you're determined, that you really want their work, you're turning up and looking professional, you've got the right product, which obviously we've now got some of the marketing that I did back in the day when I was doing it myself, you don't want to see. But now that we've got the really great marketing, a bit of our own marketing, there's an image coming across. There's a reason why people want to buy from you. And, and then when you get the opportunity, then you make the most of it. You don't go half in. If they give you a job, I've always thought the first one I will always give people for free when I'm starting off, because they've got stuff to lose. They've got current relationships, and they've got trust built up and loyalty and all that kind of stuff. So if I think I'm good enough for them to use, I can put my money where my mouth is, and I can say, I'll just do it for free for you. Let me show you what I can do. If they give me that opportunity, then I'm going to do everything I can to show that I know what I'm doing. And if that involves taking 50 photos to show that is how I would market the house, then that's what's going to get done. And at the end of that shoot, they should be in no doubt that A, I know how to help them market the property, and B, that I'm providing a great service, and that I know what I'm doing. So, and then it's just down to people to recognise that. Some people will take advantage of you, and some people will take a freebie off you, and you'll never hear from them again. But most people are fair, and if they can see that they're going to get a good product and they're going to get it from a good person, they'll take it every day. So,
and you're going into places that might have an existing photographer. So, what is it that you do differently? What's your special sauce?
Well, I mean, apart from my charm, you mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously. apart from being people's guy.
Yeah, exactly. I think at the end of the day, I've got 12 or 13 years experience, whatever it is. I've done 12 or 13,000, a lot of houses. So there aren't too many houses or situations that I haven't been in. Obviously, occasionally you get that situation where, you turn up and it's very strange. But most places, the people want the same thing from the shoot. It's either tidy or it's messy or somewhere in between. It's some grand house or something of, around the bottom level or something in between. So the experience now is the big difference. And what I've noticed in Queensland, I didn't realise that this would be my point of difference when I moved here. But what I've realised being in Queensland is that there are some really good photographers up here, but that doesn't mean that they know how to get the best out of a house. And that's been the real difference. So, there's a difference between a good photo and a good way of advertising a house. And some people will go for the good photo rather than the way of presenting the house in the best way. So, things like, getting the feeling across of, for example, an al fresco looking towards a view, whereas the photographer may say, this is structured better. But the point is, from the viewer's point of view, the feeling that it gives them seeing the alfresco looking over the view and the pool in the distance is better than the technically better photo that the photographer may take, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's also about it's not what I want to take a photo of either. One of the biggest things that that you hear as a complaint from people who have changed photographers is, he wouldn't listen. He was very stubborn, And believe it or not, that isn't me. So I can see you laughing, but that isn't me. At the end of the day, the client, you're there to advise and you've got the skill, but you don't want to be arguing with a client. You can quite happily show them the photo that you've taken and show the photo that they think is the right one because they did it with their phone before and it came out okay. There's it's not personal, I think, is the key point. If they choose the photo that you don't like, well, then so be it. It's as long as they're paying, it's all good.
Yeah, customer's always right.
Yeah, and as long as they come back, that's the key point.
Yeah. And if you were to kind of go back in time and say to Dave on day one, if there's one thing I can tell you, what would that be? Put you on the spot. But
to be honest with you, the kind of person I am, I actually don't think I would like anybody to do that. Because I've probably learned more from my mistakes than I've learned from anything else. And the kind of person I am, if someone did suddenly turn up and give me advice that was going to change my world, I'd ignore them because I'm that kind of annoying. So, I think any mistakes, as long as you learn from them, aren't really mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes with, on-site stuff as well. If you're inexperienced and you make a mistake on site and it's obvious that you've made a mistake on site, you forgot to shoot a bathroom or the best photo ever that they really wanted you to take and you must not leave without it and you didn't do it, just phone up and, I made a mistake. Here, I'm going to fix it.
It's so good. I think Richard Mendelsohn, who you guys listening will know from your inductions, and maybe you've done a few of the courses with him, but he always says never waste a good disaster. And I would say I've won clients, by impressing them, but it's when there's been a disaster, when I've messed up and then gone to them and said, I've messed up, but I'm going to fix it and this is how, that I've really, really gained their respect and secured them as a client, weirdly enough. It's how you handle those things that just make them know that they can trust you, that when things go wrong, you've got it covered, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, thinking on your feet and all that kind of, there's a bit of luck in it as well, but there's also making the most of your opportunities, Another one where, back in Victoria, this is where a guy phoned me up. I'd heard of him, but he wasn't a big agent, as in, he was just starting around. And he phoned me up and he said, someone's let me down and they were supposed to do a twilight and they didn't do a twilight. He was in a bit of a flat because the owner was moaning at him and it was the biggest house he's ever tried to sell and all of that kind of stuff. And I just said, right, just stop there for a moment. We're going to sort all of this out. It wasn't my client, it was someone else's, but the other guys wouldn't help him. I said, just stop there for a minute. We're going to sort all of this out. What do you need? Because I'm just going to come and do it. We'll do it now. We'll go out tonight. And so, I went out and did, and he still talks about this to this day, this guy, Shane. I went out, I literally only took one photo because that was all he needed. It was a front shot, but it was a twilight. I stood there for half an hour talking to him because I got there early on purpose so that he'd have to talk to me while we were waiting for the sun to get in the right place. I stood there talking to him for half an hour, took one front shot, which was a twilight, delivered it to him the next day. And he used me for every single job for the next 5 years. And the continuing jobs, the jobs after that were sort of $1,000 jobs. But it's riding to the rescue and taking the opportunities when they and recognizing the opportunities when they spring up that really help. And that comes back to the sales thing, really.
It's being there. If he didn't know who you were, if you hadn't gone in often enough that he knew to call you and had your number.
Yeah, well, he called because someone else in the office had said, see if Dave will do it. He'll sort you out. So I already had the reputation at that point as someone who would sort out a problem, which is why I enjoy reshoots so much, because it's, to be honest, it's an opportunity to show off. But well, it is. I mean, the customer's already unhappy with your competitor, and you're dealing with that problem by proxy. So you're not going to the agent, what they did before is no good, and here's me going to do it better. Their customer's already unhappy and they're in a difficult position. So now you're pleasing the agent by pleasing their customer and doing whatever you can for them. And I love that. It gets you great results because, I always go in, I go into the house and make sure, right, just so you guys know, I'm not associated with the previous photographer. I have no idea who it is. I'm not interested. I'm here to sort out what you guys were upset about, so we can do whatever you want. We can reshoot the whole thing. But what I want to know before I look round, and I don't want to look at the photos, I want you to tell me what the problem was. And you can say whatever you want because, I don't know who did it. And so you start with that right up front. And, I'm playing to the agent here. This is how I deal with customers from his point of view, right?
Yeah.
So, by the time you leave, you've already got the buy-in of the owners. And it comes back to that thing we were saying before. You should know whether the owners are going to like the shoot before you've even left, because it's the experience, not necessarily the photography, that makes the difference.
Oh, yeah. I think we need to do a whole other podcast episode about that, to be honest. Don't get me started on the customer experience and all the little tricks that you can do on site that have absolutely nothing to do with a camera that will make them love your photos.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like episode 2, guys. Maybe.
Episode 2 is the Jackie podcast, surely.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to talk about. That's my thing. Yeah. I love it. Well, cool. Maybe to finish off, I was going to say, tell me about your worst shoot, but I think that's kind of a downer. I love hearing the horror stories, but I think maybe if I was starting out, I wouldn't.
As far as the worst shoots go, I've got to keep some of my stories for the conferences, otherwise I won't have anything to talk about. So
yeah, okay. So I was going to say, tell me about your best shoot. Like, end on a high note. What's the most fun, best shoot you've ever had? I think I know what it is.
Go on then. Tell me.
Didn't you shoot in Ireland?
See, I heard that rumour as well. It's weird. I did shoot an island. I shot Elizabeth Island. It didn't end in the best way because the owner was a mad woman and didn't use the video that we did. But it was a really great experience. We went to an island that only has one house on it. It's one of the only, I think it's one of only something like 7 private islands in Australia, something like that. 60 acres, one house, many, many snakes. And we spent the night there, just me, the agent, and Nikki, my wife, just taking photos. We could take whatever we wanted. We did a video, we did drones. And, it's so remote that you have to get a ferry to French Island, and then you have to get the postman to pick you up on his boat to get there. And all the way across, I'm still thinking, what the hell am I doing here? I'm a coder. It's very strange, but it was a good experience. So,
is that the furthest you've travelled for a shoot?
No, I've travelled when I was in New South Wales. So I was in the Hills District, so sort of north of Parramatta, and I travelled out to do 3 motels. One of them was in where was it? I can't remember, but the furthest one away, Forster. Can't remember what it's called. Yeah. But one of them was in Griffith, which is 11 hours across. So, but it was just to get experience. Like, I got paid, but I didn't get paid anywhere near enough to make it worth doing 3 shoots over the course of 2 days and doing like 22 hours travelling. But it was experience. I've done it, and that makes me more experienced, that I have more stories to tell, and that helps with, well, let's put it this way, it beats sitting in a dark room looking out a window. So, it's all good. Yeah,
cool. And any other favourite shoots?
To be honest with you, they all kind of blur into one after a while, but there's been some really stunning houses. I mean, I've done, I did a house in Red Hill in Victoria that won Builder of the Year or Premium Build of the Year, something like that, going back maybe 10 years, and it was sort of a $10 million house. Views, 180-degree views of the peninsula from the hill, indoor swimming pool, all that kind of stuff. I've done places that look like baronial castles in Flinders with 200 kangaroos on site. But, I mean, after a while, everyone will know it's the weird ones, the mad ones, and the bad ones that probably stick in your mind more than anything.
I think I walked into a house that was just like, just weird, horrific, bizarre. And the agent was like, "Oh, you're probably hating this." I was like, "Are you kidding? I love these."
Yeah, I've done places where there's whole swimming pools full up with junk and rubbish, and there's no water left in it. I've done drug dens. I've done all sorts of things, but I've done places where there's literally people selling drugs out of the back bedroom while I'm there. So there are some hoarders are always fun as well. an OCD hoarder. That was a real good one. So this woman, many people think OCD is where you're really tidy, but that isn't what it is. OCD is when everything has to be in the right place. It doesn't necessarily mean tidy. So this woman was a hoarder, and the house was absolutely full of just stuff everywhere. But you couldn't move anything unless you asked her. So, you know, it would be like a sauce bottle on the table and all of these other things. You can say, well, can I just move this? Well, where are you going to move it to? And how long is it going to be there? So that took like, you know, it was a 2.5 hour shoot for like 10 photos. But again, it's not about that job. It's about the relationship with the agent. And the agent was, you know, I mean, she didn't know what to do. She had just left. So I dealt with it. I got through it. And again, you keep the agent and you keep the relationship and it's all good.
Yeah. It's definitely not boring.
No, definitely not boring. I'm sure there's a autobiography in it one day, if I can remember any of it. So
yeah.
I have to write it before I go senile.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Dave. That's really interesting. I think, obviously huge amount of experience, and I think we could talk for hours and hours and hours, which I think we're going to do, but we're just going to break it up into episodes so that people listen. But yeah, really, really interesting. I'm excited for this podcast. I think if you guys listening have anything specifically that you'd be interested in hearing, anyone you'd want to hear from or talk to, or any subject you'd like covered, please let us know. You have our email addresses. But yeah, hopefully we haven't bored you. Hopefully you got something out of this, and we will see you next time.
Cool.
Say bye, Dave.
Oh, bye.
Cool.